Hey everybody, it's Wednesday, January 20th. It's a whole lot of transitioning going on today, right? So we'll get into a little bit of that. But first and foremost, how are you? How are you feeling? I see a lot of you guys were excited, a lot of chucks and pearls, and I mean, really some really historic things that, took place in terms of, you know, Kamala, President, VP, Vice President Kamala, and so on, and a couple of other things in administration. So we'll get into that. Um, just want to see how y'all doing today, and we'll just talk about a few things and see where, where we are, and what do we do now? I'm going to pick this energy up because that is supposed to be where I'm most excited about. Not necessarily from the standpoint of not necessarily the standpoint from an individual person, but more or less from a collective, lens. And I just always, let me say, I haven't always felt this way, but I grew to learn, maybe a decade or so ago, that the communities and the people do the heavy lifting, and that the individuals that we elect and we appoint to, or we don't really appoint them, but we elect them to be in certain positions, really are carrying out the the work that we want them to, and they should. We know that lobbying is an issue, but we'll get into that just a little bit, not too much. I'm gonna keep it light. So just let me know, guys, how you guys doing, and we're gonna go from there. I know you probably still are watching. I think there was supposed to be some performances tonight from a few artists. I don't know all of them. I think that it was what is the name that crosses across the screen? Oh, Bon Jovi was one of them. Who?
Katy Perry.
Katy Perry. That's Rihanna, the executive producer tonight. Katy Perry. So we're gonna see how this all works itself out. But I see a lot of you guys are excited, and I can't say I'm not excited. I'm kind of neutral, so that's kind of how I feel about that. But I will share this, with you. I try to look at it from a lens of not necessarily a selfish perspective, because I think about where I am at my age and my daughters and my kids, and what it is that they will inherit, so to speak, and just like the things that went into place way before, when I was like 14 years old, like the crime bills and things like that, to see how they manifested themselves in the lives of people like myself, other, individuals, as well as just all of the things that take place that at some point we don't necessarily see the trickle down forward until years later. And so when I'm approaching my conversations about what this is to look like for them, I'm thinking about things not only just from the criminal justice perspective, but also in terms of education and something that I think is really one we don't talk a lot about, which is like the environment and global warming and things like that. I think that, I don't think we really connect the dots as much as we should on that. So that's just something that I think about. And I'm fortunate that at 20, I'm fortunate that I have twins that they're 20 years old, where I can actually have conversations with them that I don't know that I was necessarily having with my own parents about certain issues during that time, right? And I think what is been a benefit for them, but not so much a benefit from a lot of people who felt like they've lost something, people who did lose something, is to be able to see the difference between an Obama administration and then a Trump administration, and just see how that shakes itself out and have a whole lot of conversation about it. So if anything, they at least have the benefit of seeing like some of the, very worst it could look like, and, some of what necessarily wasn't discussed, and how it could be moving in a different direction, and maybe another conversation added. So that's just my thought. Hey, Miss Pauline, just great. So the pardons, I want to talk about that. Did you see it? Did y'all see who he pardoned? Recognize any names? Anybody familiar to ya? Listen, I don't think that anybody was surprised about Steve Bannon or anybody else. I don't even think we were surprised about Lil Wayne. I don't think we were surprised about that. But I'm gonna tell you this. Given the people that he has pardoned in the past who have created, or not created, but have been charged, had filed, charges against them in some of the most, egregious things in terms of like treason, if we're going to measure it on a scale of crime, then, to see these last couple of pardons didn't necessarily surprise me, because it seemed like to me, he went all the way there with the other people. Of course, he didn't. I don't know if you guys seen Kwame. He was pardoned, and I will say this on that. And I'm not necessarily. I don't know that I really care that about who he pardoned. I'm gonna be honest, but I will tell you this: ever let Marissa Alexander get into a presidency seat, and I will be pardoning all political prisoners. I don't care what they did. I'm just telling you that right now. So as I thought about it from his perspective, I was like, you know what? Even let me be the governor of a state that I'm living in. I'm pardoning people just off. I'm going to do that on the strength of that. I'm going to do that. So, I can't say that I wouldn't have remained as loyal to some of the people that I believe I would have liked to see released. And there's quite a few people like Mumia and quite a few other people, political prisoners. I forget the gentleman's name. Activist, white guy. I think he's in New York. And they've been behind bars for years. So I would certainly, without hesitation and sleep well at night, pardon them. So that's just how I feel, about that, if I must be honest. And we're going to try our best to be that way. And also, I think one of the sentiments that he stated was that in the article where they talked about him pardoning the people, he said the source, of course, it's always a source, Trump resonated with cases in which individuals who went to trial got significantly more prison time than co-defendants who cooperated with law enforcement, i.e. he got a problem with people who snitch. That's basically what he's saying. He says, I don't think he likes when people get screwed just because they go to trial. Now that resonates with me because oftentimes, the state attorneys and the prosecutors will set a very harsh, standard in a sentence, because ultimately they have the power and the discretion to do so. And what ends up happening is a lot of the times they give them this scenario where they throw the book at them in order to force people into a plea. Now, in many cases, people plea, and so much so that the rate is like 95% of people who actually take a plea, and then 5% of people who actually go to trial. I don't think I'm looking at it from a Trump perspective as just much as a factual perspective, which is this. I would agree that if there is, in fact, a plea that was offered prior to trial and a person does decide to not take the plea, but exercise their right to go to trial, I don't believe that they should be penalized for doing so. And so the issue that I have, and I know there's other attorneys who have felt that same way. I don't think they do as much job as an attorney family, if you will, of advocating for these things. I'm not quite sure what they get out of it. I mean, I don't know. I'm not an attorney. I don't know what they think, but I'm thinking in some way it's got to be advantageous to not necessarily speak against it in a more collective way. What that looks like, I'd have to do some looking into. But from a standpoint of somebody who says, hey, listen, all my rights are still available to me. I want to exercise my right to due process and go all the way to trial. I don't believe that they should be penalized with the stiffest of sentence. And the other thing is, if that plea was offered and it was available prior to trial, I believe that it should still be an offer after the trial, considering how much it costs to go to trial, and the fact that they do so many of them. But even if they didn't, I don't believe that they should be penalized for exercising that right, which is obviously in the Constitution. So yes, that's true. It is very much experience. So I'll say that, and I can speak to it. And I'll say this trial is not easy. By the time you make the decision to go to trial, I've said on my here thinking out loud, my live feed before, is that it is not looking like Perry Mason. It does not look like what's that show? A Law and Order. I wish it was that swift. It is a long process. It is hard. There is so many things that you know about that you cannot necessarily, add into your defense. There's so much procedural and rules that prevent you, I believe, from being able to have the best defense that you can have. And then you couple that with an attorney who has zero trial experience, you almost have a snowball's chance in hell of actually winning a trial. They do happen, but you have to think about it. The ones with the high profile attorneys who've been doing it for some time and have a lot of money at their disposal to pay law clerks and all kinds of people to do the research, and they just argue a case, is very, very rare. So just something for you to think about. Let me see what y'all talking about. Hey, y'all, appreciate y'all joining. The other thing is my hopes. So I'm gonna tell you, I noticed that there was a lot of excitement, and I think rightfully so. I mean, look at this. This is me today, y'all. It's the being a Black woman for me. I'm all on that. I am totally there. I'm just as excited as the next person, and I think it's something to absolutely admire and celebrate. And I'm wishing the very best for the administration and what they can accomplish. I will tell you, I was very relieved to see that there wasn't any violence or anything out of the way, in DC or anybody, anywhere else in the country. I was, actually relieved to see that, very prayerful and relieved to see that. And so now the question then becomes, what are our hopes? And I think we got to just give people time to celebrate. I think they, hey, it's cool. You know what I mean? They feel that way. And I also saw, individuals on the opposite side of that spectrum who was like, listen, I ain't celebrating nothing because you ain't did anything. And what you did do, Mr. President Joe Biden, back in the day has been a problem. So I think rightfully so. I think everybody absolutely has the right to feel what they feel. And I think it's also fair to believe or understand and know that there's going to be people that's like, listen, look at what this, says, considering, our history and who has occupied those spaces at the highest, office of the land. And then there's also room for people that says, I don't know, you know what I mean? Because I'm not with, the status quo, and I'm really looking at what's going on here. And I think the best way, to look at that from a country perspective, from our communities and our families is really look at what we can do. Because again, like I said, at the top of the hour at 7 was that we carry the load. And so with so many different things that affect us at our level, we have the most power to make change or force change at our local levels. Now, this is something I wanted to say. It's also very important that we are actively, pursuing and educating and supporting those individuals who are not the status quo, because then what we should be hoping for and believe that they're not, they're not slaves to lobbyists or any other potential interest groups, that they are in fact for the people, like your Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's, Ayanna Pressley. There's going to be a few more that I think who are not on that bandwagon. Once we elect them into the office, they can then go to the Capitol and vote for those things at that level. Because a lot of the times, those things that take place, we got to understand it takes a while before it shakes itself down and we actually get to see what it looks like when it's implemented, right? So in a 4-year term, we probably I've had two, local elections in cities and mayors and sheriffs and state attorneys and state representatives. We've had those happen maybe, twice in the time of one term in the presidency. So these are all moving parts that we all have to really consider. So when we're organizing to support a candidate, we want to make sure it's someone that we know that once we send, to those the Congress and the House and the Senate, that they won't lose sight of what, the community is asking them to go up there for and support. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. I'd like to see as soon as possible a few things that would convince me that President Biden and Vice President Kamala and the rest of the administration are serious about making some changes that reverse some of the harm that was done long ago take place, would be to completely reverse minimum mandatories. I think that is one they could definitely start with. I think another thing is to start with removing truth in sentencing laws, period. Because a lot of that forced a lot of people to complete 85% of their sentences. And then the other thing, to tie that knot into it, along with removal and abolishing of the death penalty. These are things I think, like just the way they did the crime bill and they wrote it into existence, go on in with your little pen at executive order and write it out for these things, because then we could actually move to make some significant change. I don't want to hear about having task force and all this other stuff. We got plenty of data, okay, and evidence as to what this looks like. We can go ahead and implement that. And I think it's important because what's happening is what we saw was he wasn't by himself. There was a whole Black caucus that supported that. So there's a whole lot of people responsible for that. So why not reverse that? That can be done. That's just, my thoughts on that. I don't know how y'all feel about that. Let me see what y'all talking about. 98, and 96, those crimes. So there was truth in sentencing and the crime of the minimum mandatory, which locked a lot of people for lower level drug offenses. I think that was the one he was speaking about. And let's see here. Look at the sentiment of the Danielle by Trumpy. A lot of people feel that way. I get, of course, his supporters don't feel that way. I don't know that I don't know how to feel about how they feel. I don't think all of them were racist, but I think a lot of them felt like they had lost something and stuff was being taken from them. And I don't know how to identify with that. I don't know. Y'all tell me how you feel about that. I don't really know. Another thing I like to see is compassionate release. I think we have way too many people who have had lots of sentences for long times and are elderly. And I don't see, the point in having them just sit there behind bars forever. And I think that's definitely an issue. I think there's also it could be with all of those things, they incentivize state governments to keep the percentage of truth in sentencing at 85%. So just like they incentivize states to enforce this tough on crime policies by saying, if you do truth in sentencing, if you do this and if you do that, then you'll get, your state will be incentivized. They can do the same thing from the stuff I'm asking about, the same exact thing. So in my mind, there's no excuse. I don't want to hear your excuses when it comes to any of that. It can be done. Figure out a pathway to get it done. Not only that, you absolutely have the brains and the funding and the people, if not in your administration, go around to your local organizing groups and talk to them. Like, I believe they'll be willing to work with you. Like, there's just no excuse. So that's my thoughts on that. Student loan forgiveness. Your girl need that. I need it. I need it. And I don't know how to tell you people who paid your loans. I don't know what to say to you. But I would greatly appreciate it if mine was forgiven. I hate to be selfish, but let me definitely tell you, I could use that. Very appreciative for my education, but I like to get rid of some of if maybe even not complete forgiveness. Just stop killing me with the interest. I don't know. We're gonna work through that. I know there's programs out there. Let's see. Charles Grover said, I'm in favor of compassionate release. How does that work? Well, it just depends on how you outline it, but the compassionate release you can put together some terms of how that, who would qualify for that. And then you say, if so-and-so has been in prison for over this long, maybe. So I'm not crazy about saying, oh, it has to be nonviolent, because honestly, let me just tell y'all something. A lot of people who have nonviolent crimes didn't commit them to begin with. That's number one. Number two, a lot of people who've done violent crimes, and this is something you could look up at, was it the Sentencing Project? Oftentimes, people who've committed violent crimes and have been charged have done a lot of time. Oftentimes, they are the least amount. They have the least amount recidivism rate. So that absolutely is something that needs to be considered. So I'm not going to say that compassionate release needs to only be the people who don't have violent crimes. I don't agree with that at all. I think it needs to be spread out across the board, and I think states need to be incentivized to do it. The governors of each state needs to be incentivized to do it. Excuse me. So that's my thoughts on that. Let me see what y'all talking about here. So those are just a few things that I thought about. I didn't watch all of it, y'all. I needed to be able to dip in and out. So like I'm the person that's going to record it, DVR, and I'm going to go through the things that are something I want to see, right? But, I think it's, important to really, reiterate the diversity and color that was there. And also the fact that the young sister, young queen, Miss Amanda Gorman's poetry, it's amazing, because I was thinking it would have been really, really nice for somebody like a Toni Morrison, and of course, the late Toni Morrison and Angela Mayu to see. Maya Angelou, y'all help me out. Maya Angelou, excuse me. So it would have been really nice to see, because that's to me an opportunity of people who had the torch, whose shoulders that she was on, and they passed the torch, and she was there. She showed up in that moment. So shout out to her, and I'm appreciative of the gift of her creativity. I love creatives. Y'all are really dope. I think back to share a personal story with you all. I think back to the times when I was incarcerated, and the mail that I would receive, and the creative people would draw pictures, and the campaigns that the flyers went out with, like this very like artistic presentation of me without them being pictures, like caricatures and different things. And those were I still have a lot of that here. I still have so many of those things here, because to me, that stuff amplified more so than a black and white document. But when you see somebody put their artistic spin on something, I love it. So the same thing with spoken word and any other form, music and so on. So thank God for you creatives. And I see Amanda definitely fits into that. And I was glad to hear it. I was tuned into every word of that, and I'm hoping to see more from her. I'm sure we will. Let's see here. Thank you for your response. I try to answer. If I don't know, I'll find it and I'll post it later. But yeah, there's a whole lot of I've posted a lot of things about things you guys can look at. So that's my hopes. My hopes is that we support those people at our local level, understand how important it is to continue to push those people who are going to go and advocate on our behalf, not for lobbyist special interest or to be in the pockets of anybody else getting a little check or a little money, because we don't need that. It's too, it's always been too much at stake, but here we are. And so I'd really like to see the things that I mentioned off rip for that to take place, in terms of him really sowing the seed to say, hey, I am going to do, I got y'all. I know y'all helped me get in the office. Y'all got me. Yeah, start somewhere along in there, Mr. President. Joseph Biden, please. So that's pretty much, my thoughts on that. And I'm looking forward to the other states have other offices that are up for election. I know in my home state of Florida, we have in a couple of years, we have quite a few things that'll be up for it, So offices that'll be vacant. Well, they're not gonna be vacant. They could use a challenge, and some that will, should be some mostly should be opposed. So I hope that we stay the course, and keep the pressure on. I don't believe that we should back up in any shape or form. I don't think we should not be hearing this administration say, well, we need to look into that. Oh, and the last thing I like to see is reparations. There's a blueprint for that. It's been for years. I know it's hard to quantify what the Black descendants of Black African-American slaves have meant, or I should say African slaves have meant to this country. I know you can't quantify it. I know. They know. We know. But you can figure it out. Get somewhere close. That's how I feel about that. So y'all, appreciate you joining me tonight. And I am going to have a stupendous rest of this evening. And you all enjoy, the rest of your pearls, your chucks. As you can see, I'm here with mine, representing all the sisters, because we just did our darn thing. And show up, be a part of the conversation. Ain't nobody gonna save us but us, so let's get to work. All right, y'all. Thank you. Peace out.